Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I have Kate Sheridan on with me, local artist here in Philadelphia, which is really cool. It's also one of the other things that really caught my eye is seeing that you're a local person, and I probably am. There we go. Sorry about that. I've been away from this for a week, and I was getting some feedback because I forgot to silence myself. But welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you. It's awesome to be on here.
So you do you have you're an illustrator and you also have a web comic you do.
Yeah, I have this comic called Fallow Time, which is just like a mini comic that's based on D&D. I'm hoping to start like an actual like kind of more classical style epic web comic, hopefully in the fall or winter. But yeah, I mean, most of my stuff at this point I publish online, and like I'll sell like physical copies at conventions and stuff like that.
Are you hitting many conventions?
Yeah, I'm only doing two this year because I'm traveling a whole lot. But I'm going to FlameCon in New York, and I'll be at Thought Bubble in Leeds in England, which is really exciting, and that'll be my first time there too.
That sounds actually pretty awesome. You're quite international, actually. From
Yeah.
going back to our conversation we were having before we actually got started. So, so do you know? Do you happen to know Anthony and Nicole Amato from Cardboard Fortress?
I don't.
Okay, because one of them just cheered in the chat.
Uh,
They're actually my friends that are local to Philadelphia, so
oh, nice.
you guys should hook up sometime. They're also always looking for gaming and stuff, and they always do cool stuff with board games.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I'd love
so
to like get more involved in that kind of stuff around here.
yeah, there's definitely a good scene. Actually, you go to their house and it's like being in a game store.
Nice.
So FlameCon, I've never been to that convention. What is that all about?
It's like this queer comic con, which is just great. Like it's kind of somewhere between an indie convention and like a more like typical comic convention. Like people show up in cosplay. There's like a ton of different panels. I'm hopefully hosting a Dungeons and Dragons panel there. I'm still waiting to hear back, but it'd be really cool if that ended up going through.
Oh, that would
But
be.
it's just like, sorry.
I was gonna say that would be cool. When is FlameCon?
It is the second or third weekend in August. I think it's like the 17th to the 18th or so.
Oh, cool. The week after Gen Con.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like a couple of days after I come back from that Iceland residency, so it's gonna be kind of a wild couple of weeks, but it'll be a lot of fun.
So, what do you want to do a panel on?
The one that I pitched is basically I think I called it Dungeons and Dragons and Queers and Comics. So it's just like it'd be a panel all about like the intersections between like this really imaginative and fun and different kind of game and like how that fuels our art and like how that intersects with our identity and stuff too. Um, and I've got like this awesome group of panelists line up. So I really hope it goes through. And if it does, I think it'll be a ton of fun.
Sweet. So, if folks are at FlameCon, definitely check that out for sure. And do you want to talk about the Iceland residency? I know we were talking about it a little bit. I just find that fascinating and cool, having not really gone too many places.
Yeah, it's like I've been really lucky this year in that I can kind of do some like go to a couple of different new countries. But I applied to this residency, which Light Gray Art Lab hosts. That's basically like a group of 5 to 10 artists all go together and stay at like this cabin in Iceland. And my group is going to the north, so like I'm going into Akureyri and like we're going to a bunch of the different like natural locations and like towns around there, and then each night like a lot of location drawing and stuff like that, which is a lot of fun, and I want to do a lot more of it. Like that definitely feeds into why I want to travel so much. And then each night we all go back and like different members of the residency give a talk or a lecture or do some kind of workshop about like our practice and like different things that like we want to express about like, how we work or like different things that we do, like mine's probably going to be about location and animal drawing because that's something that I like to do a lot. um, but it's an awesome idea, and it's not at all something I thought I would be doing at this point, so I'm really excited about it.
Are you familiar with Sarah Dillinger's work?
That sounds really familiar, but I'm not off the top of my head.
She does a lot of really great animal drawings and anatomy drawings. If you find her on Instagram or Facebook, she's definitely worth following for sure. I want to thank Michael Francis Jr. for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. So when it comes to illustrating art, comics, what are the things that what are the areas you really like to work in? What is your like style, I guess?
Um, well, obviously fantasy is probably like my most favorite sort of area of focus, both for like illustration and comics and like writing too. Like I love writing. And like I think like a lot of my work itself, like I'm really into thin line and like bright vibrant colors, like variations on pastel and stuff like that. um yeah.
Uh, so Anthony from Cardboard Fortress, if you're not a member of Philadelphia Illustrator Guild group on Facebook, you should pop in.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I definitely like, I want to, I've been back living here for about a year and I haven't done as much as I would like to get more involved in the local art scene. So that sounds great.
It's sometimes it's always hard too, like picking and choosing where you want to work and where you want to focus your time. Uh,
Yeah.
as with us being like an internet presence, like that's one of the things we miss is not doing enough local stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's been also one of the best things that D&D itself has done for me, like getting to like know new people or like know people who were in my friend group, but I just like I'm not as close to them. Like making these different and like deeper relationships has been one of the, I think, best benefits for me personally of doing tabletop.
Absolutely. I just want to point out real quick, you can find links to Kate in the description as always, so you can go follow her and check her out. Check out the website and social media. Now I agree. Like the coolest thing about playing tabletop games is being able to interact with people from all different walks of life, and literally it does just draws all different kinds of people. Even in our own small gaming group, one person might is an ER doctor. Some people do office work. Other people, have their own businesses. I was doing construction, so it's like all over the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it can be really hard to, like, especially after you get out of school, to meet people who are outside of your, chosen profession. Like basically everybody I know is artists. But like D&D, like whether like in person, like meeting other people in Philadelphia or doing it more online and stuff, has just helped me meet people from different walks of life who are just all share this kind of love for games.
I find it interesting too with the newer crop of gamers that I'm getting exposed to is they're latching onto the hobby and then they're hitting the ground with their feet running, because you're new to the hobby, which is awesome. Welcome, and you're already looking to do panels.
Yeah, like, and that's why I decided to sort of pitch and moderate it, because basically everyone else that would be participating in it like has a lot more experience with it than me, and I'm like more interested in hearing what they have to say than like talking as much about my own experience, because it is kind of limited and I do also already talk about it a lot. So like we've got like, people who are DMs, people who like play together. Like my friend Emily has been playing for like 8 years and has like 10 different characters, and like um people who also have experience with like LARPing and stuff like that too, like the different sort of intersections of this kind of like nerd gaming culture.
So are you strictly playing now as a player, or do you do some GMing as well?
I'm just a player for right now. I don't really have enough experience at this point to feel comfortable DMing, but it's definitely like I'd love to work up to that. Absolutely. I mean, I love world building. I love like making these sort of like things and like seeing how people interact with them and seeing like how people play off of them. Definitely.
Well, that part is a little bit of a fallacy, I think. And I've met people that have started GMing and right away, and or have never even played as a player. So don't kid yourself. If it's something you're interested, just do it. After a certain amount of time, you know enough of the rules, and if you're the GM, just make the rules up as you go. You can figure it out later. Also, too, there's nothing wrong with being the GM and leaning on maybe one of your more experienced players for actual rules calls themselves. So you can delegate a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
GMing is for everyone. You can check out. Well, our channel has a lot of videos, but Matt Colville also has a lot of videos about becoming a GM. So I think the main thing to GMing is, do you want to do it or not? And that should be the starting spot.
Yeah, I mean, like it seems a lot more, in my experience and from hearing other people talk about either doing it or working with a variety of like GMs is like the most important part of it is being flexible and making things fun and sort of like like building a game to your players and to their characters is like a really important quality.
Anthony from Portrait Fortress says also there's nothing wrong with being a GM and messing up. People act like it's the GM's fault for everything, but is much more the players. So yeah, everyone's responsible at the table for the fun. It's not just the GM. And I a lot of times I find I've played with GMs that weren't great, but if the players were having fun and engaged, it kind of makes up for it.
Yeah, definitely. And like it's how everyone comes together.
Yeah, you can have the best GM in the world, but if the players aren't jiving and they don't seem like they came to play, it won't matter.
Yeah.
So it's a collaborative thing. So Nerdy Doug, I just picked up Fallow Time by Kate. Looks like a great D&D inspired comic.
Thank you so much. It's also it's pay what you want on my Gumroad, which is linked in the description. So like you can just pick it up for nothing too. It's been out for like a little over a year. So
shh, don't tell people that. You're an artist. You need to eat.
I mean, if you want to pay me, you totally can do that. And I would absolutely appreciate that very much.
Well, speaking of Fallow Time, what exactly is the Fallow Time about?
It's like it's this short like 10 to 12 page comic about this group of female adventurers who are just kind of chilling after a battle. Like it picks up like right at the end of it, and there are a couple of little flashback sequences to the actual fighting. But like one of the things that I really love about D&D and about fantasy in general is those quiet little moments in between where all of the big stuff happens, because that's where like a lot of the character development happens like during the actual big events and stuff, obviously, but you kind of get to see how that changes them. And like in Fallow Time, they've just sort of come together for the first time. Like they're, allies of convenience. They're not exactly friends, but they're starting to build that sort of thing. And you can see them kind of come together as they talk about like the way that they fought together and just like chill and drink some hot chocolate and stuff like that.
So essentially the way most D&D groups start.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like not quite the standard, 3 people walk into a tavern thing, but
So how far out do you have that planned?
It's like I've kind of like shelved expanding on that for now, because I'm actually working on another D&D comic with my friend who I mentioned before, Emily Cheeseman, about our D&D characters. Like we've never played together, but we ended up making these 2 characters who have perfectly like conflicting personalities and also have the same facial scars. So that just started this whole thing, and we're working on this graphic novel basically. But I'd love to actually make Fallow Time. It's not like totally planned out, and it would be something that's pretty contained, but like I have the basic idea of, how they all come together and like sort of how they develop throughout it and how stuff wraps up a bit.
Nerdator Doug, he runs the website for us. That would be a great way to start a new campaign right after a battle where the characters were strangers, survived the fight. Now what? I kind of dig on that idea too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just kind of throwing them into it. I mean, the last campaign that I joined, it was entirely homebrew, and like all of our characters are like these kind of like circus freak-esque. Like mine was a dragon who's stuck in human form, so she's kind of got like halfway between human and dragonborn traits. And like we had a sphinx. We had a djinn, like a fire djinn, and like so we started it out where they're all like captives by this circus, and like they're in cages and they're being forced to perform and stuff, and they don't know each other, but they just like set this place on fire and break out, and they're like, okay, what do we do now?
In the game that I've been running since, I guess, since 5e came out, I have a couple of characters that play gobelows, which which they have the entertainer background, so they're like clownery is their form of entertainment. So they're goblins dressed in motley most of the time,
Oh my goodness.
and they're modeled after juggalos. Which,
Oh no.
yeah, exactly. I didn't even know what a juggalo was until till they told me about their character ID, and I had to like I fell down this deep dark hole of humanity. Well, and I use the words humanity loosely.
Yeah, it's juggalos are an experience.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it. But that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and and I guess that's something that we've talked about at Nerdarchy about D&D, and one of the reasons why I really enjoy it, because it's a way for someone to be creative and express themselves, and maybe they're not necessarily an artist or a musician, but like we can all make up these silly stories together.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, for people who already do that, like having to do something that started out as a hobby or a passion and figuring out how to make money out of it can become like a real drag in a lot of ways. So having this outlet that like still has that like brings back those aspects of play into it, and that like in a lot of cases is kind of hard to monetize unless you like turn it into a comic or anything like that, but like that brings the play into the work, and it gives a really important outlet for people who don't often get that, and also who work like in a very solitary way. Like freelancing is very kind of lonely. And like it's really important to maintain contact with people so you don't like just become like a cave goblin or something like that.
Golem, you turn into Golem.
Yeah. Like exactly.
You can't sell any of your art because it becomes your precious. Um, so Garbo Fortress says, "I would love to see some Sheridan illustrations of that party." Are there any illustrations of the party? I know, like my brother used to, and it's probably why he became an artist, because he was much younger than the rest of us. Would always be drawing and doodling, what was going on in the game. Do you find yourself doing the same?
Yeah, definitely. And I have like a lot of work of my various. I have four now. I have two of them I haven't used yet, but I have four D&D characters. I also do I'm in the middle of working on a commission of like drawing someone else's party. I'm also working on like somebody commissioned me to do a character sheet of their characters. So it's like them and like some of their various outfits and the items that they have. And like that's like, oh, it's so much fun. I love it a lot. Like both getting to do it for myself and then also getting to do that for people who like are really creative and like love these things, but just like they like either they like don't quite have the skill to do it in the way that they want to, or they just like they love your work and they want to see it in your style, is like um it's very like humbling, and it's really fun to be able to do that for other people, I think.
So, looking at the stuff that you seem to be working on now, and the amount of time you've been playing D&D. So it seems like D&D has had a bit of an influence on the direction of your art.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that I also like. It's one of those things I always knew that I would love if I ever got the chance to get into it too. Like that sort of like mix of comedy and drama and like kind of being at the whims of fate type stuff is a big draw for me in fantasy. And like, but yeah, it is absolutely completely taken over my life when you look at like the amount of time that I have played D&D to the amount of time now that I spend like thinking about D&D and planning new characters and like making D&D inspired art. Um, but I love that, and it's like when I moved home last year, I had to move home because like I got really sick and I had to stop drawing basically for like 4 to 6 months. So
I'm
like
sorry to hear that. It's awful.
yeah, oh man, it sucked. And it's like it's really great to be in a place now where I'm doing a lot better and like joining a local D&D group and like planning this story with my friend Emily like um really helped me kind of get back into that place once I started feeling better. Cuz like drawing can be hard even when you feel great, drawing for money especially. Um and it can like, at least for me, like going back to the most self-indulgent version of the things that I enjoyed doing is what helped me get back into doing it regularly and helped me build up to doing, the parts of it that might not be as fun too.
There's parts that aren't fun. Well, as a freelancer, I know exactly what you mean. There's so much work you have to do that has nothing to do with the work that you want to do.
Yeah, like yeah. And
And
it's, like I can't complain too much because like, I do D&D commissions and stuff like that. It's a ton of fun, but it's also sometimes even doing the stuff that you want to do or the stuff that is going to be super beneficial in the long run can just be a pain.
well, yeah, I mean, I'm just coming back from Origins, and I had met Chris Seaman out there, and he does a bunch of work for Pathfinder and Wizards of the Coast, and he actually did the ogre Howdah that's in the Mordecai's Tome of Foes, and the the ogre with the goblin launcher on its back that, and it was cool because and a lot of the stuff you're saying he says the same thing, and like he's established, so it's just part of the the gig, and why he started doing these like cameo creeps, he calls them, because you have to figure out like your way or you're like constantly always on that rat race. But even seeing like him, he's like, and like you couldn't wait to show someone, you could tell because he pulls out this mini that he went and bought at one of the other booths, and he's like, look, here's the thing I drew, but they made it into a mini, and it's the ogre with the catapult on its back and the chains to pull to launch the
Oh, that's
goblin wearing
awesome.
spikes.
Yeah,
So
like that's another really great thing about like tabletop and tabletop top culture is like the way that stuff can kind of spiral out. Like you just make something and then somebody else takes it and does like this incredible and different thing with it that you never would have thought of, or like they love the thing that you made so much they like make a story or like a figure out of it. Like that's awesome.
yeah, Cardboard Fortress brings up a good point. Everything is less fun when you have to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess that's a huge part of it. Even like just human nature, I guess. Even like if it's something you wanted to do, but that instant that you have to do it, it's like I don't want to do it now.
Yeah, like nah. Like it'll be fun once I start doing it, but like that 5 to 10 minutes it takes to get into the groove can kind of just be like, I don't
So
want.
if time and money weren't an issue, what kind of projects would you just work on all the time?
Oh man. I mean, I'd probably like, if I had nothing else to do this summer, if I wasn't like going to conventions, if I didn't need money for travel and stuff like that, I'd probably just be working full time on this D&D inspired graphic novel with Emily. That and like I have a couple of other like personal projects that I'm working on right now. Um, but like that story is kind of like at this point in my life, it's like my heart and soul basically. And I know she feels like a really similar way. Like it's just like, um, it's awesome to get to play off someone else in this way, and like to have someone who's doing like half the work both in the art and the writing is really great. Like it's not like one of us is just kind of like the like making the art for what the other person writes, and like each of us, like the protagonists are my character and her character, so we kind of have built this story from like the ways in which we think they would interact, and like what we think would be the most beneficial to them, like in terms of their character arc and stuff like that. And like we're building like this world that's like inspired by D&D, but also goes in these different directions and is inspired by other stuff that we like, which is just awesome. It's so cool.
So this is a very deeply collaborative project in the sense that you're both are kind of doing the same kind of jobs at the same time. Have you ever done anything like this?
No, absolutely not. And it's such a refreshing thing. And it also like it gets to the core of the stuff that I love about playing D&D itself too.
So, do you guys ever get together and work together, or is it always remotely?
Um it's mostly remotely, but like when we first started, like we made a zine about them last year. Because we like, we're table buddies for most things. Like if one of
Mhm.
us gets in, the other one will come along and we'll like go together. Like we're both tabling at FlameCon and Thought Bubble this year. So like usually during conventions are the times where we get to actually like sit down and like run stuff off of each other. And then the rest of the time we'll do it like, like through text chat or voice chat on Discord. Like we'll get together and like talk for an hour a month or like every couple of weeks and like just hash things out.
For anyone joining us or new to the chat, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Just put question in front so I can pick them out more easily. Nerder Doug is excited because you used the word zine.
Scenes are great. Love it.
So Cardboard Fortress has a technical question for you. I love the clear line style, Tintin fan, but in your work, I can't tell if you start with the shapes, colors, and work towards the lines, or if you start with the lines to get the shapes and colors.
I definitely start with lines, and like I try to I'm like the worst person at explaining colors because so much of it is really intuitive, and it's but like a lot of it, like I try to leave those like I do kind of plan for colors though when I'm working on the art. Like I try to leave those like the appropriate amount of space for different colors and like add like accents kind of accordingly. But yeah, I'm very I'm very much a like I love doing colors, but like I probably spend the most time and the most energy on like draftsmanship and stuff like that. And like layouts, definitely too. Layouts are really important for color and stuff too.
Carbon Forger says, I'm looking at this major oak illustration in particular.
Oh yeah, that was I actually did that for a Light Gray Art Lab show called Arboretum, which came out this spring. That was like, based all around like trees and like the sort of social and mythological implications of like trees and forests and stuff like that. So I did mine about the major oak, which is this huge, ancient, like 1,000 years old oak tree in Sherwood Forest that's really closely associated with the Robin Hood legend.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah.
I'm surprised our friend from Drunks and Dragons, I haven't seen him appear yet. He pops in on a lot of live chats, and he is also local to Philly. He runs a game night twice a month, I believe, at different pubs.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, so they like go in and take over a portion of the pub and just run games of D&D.
Nice. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, he should track down people like you in Cardboard Fortress and have celebrity guest nights.
Celebrity.
Uh,
One of these days, maybe.
Hey, we can fake it till we make it. You do stuff. That's all that
Yeah.
matters. You do stuff. If you go in the cons, you're gonna do panels and shows. It's close enough for me.
That's good to hear.
So, well, you know, we're internet famous.
Yeah. Which
So,
is, that's all that matters, really.
yeah. Um. So, next year, do you plan on doing more cons? You said this year you're traveling a lot, so not as many.
Yeah, I'm I either have or I'm plan I think I did. I applied to Emerald City Comic Con because I've never been out to Seattle, and I have a lot of friends who like go every year and who have a lot of fun with that. Um
Ooh, the
I'd love to.
Mistress of Monsters is usually out there, Crystal Sully.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah, like it's such a different and like interesting group of people out there. And like I've been to LA a couple of times, but other than that I've never really hit the West Coast.
Okay.
Um but yeah, Emerald City, I'd love to try to do Heroes Con one of these days. Flame Con, I'm gonna try to do basically every year until I'm dead, probably. Because it's like it's open enrollment, so you just like go and you reserve a table. It's like, okay, I'm going to FlameCon.
Have you
Um,
checked out LexCon? I keep getting harassed about going to that one.
where is that one?
That is in Reading,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's a fantasy art specific convention.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out, definitely. I'd love to do Keystone Comic Con too. I know is starting, and that looks really interesting. It's going to be the week before I go to Leeds, so I don't think I can do two conventions 2 weeks in a row when I've got one of them that I have to go to England for.
And England, that's the Bubble Con.
Yeah, Thought Bubble.
Thought Bubble. Sorry. That sounds like a lot of fun. I would
Yeah, I'm
I,
super hyped for that.
I would definitely like to do some international cons, and I'm so jealous because some of my friends are doing D&D in a castle. So over in France.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay, that sounds insane.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Satine is DMing over there, and Satine and Rudy, and they're from Maze Arcana. They're doing like their mini Europe tour from
Oh,
uh,
awesome.
from then until like Gen Con.
Nice.
Yeah, so that seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd love to do something like that. I know they do stuff like that for like LARPing too. Like they do like they like rent out a castle in Germany or something and they just all go run around and like that sounds like the coolest thing ever.
Maybe for me, maybe 10, 20 years ago. Now I feel like I'm getting a little old. Like my shoulder hurts and my hip hurts.
Yeah, like too much running around. But like yeah, like D&D in a castle sounds amazing. That
Yeah.
sounds like so much fun.
Have you done any LARPing?
Like I used to like play pretend when I was younger, but I haven't like I feel like LARPing and D&D too, like it depends so much on who you play with. You have to find the right group of people. And like I don't know where or who I would do it with around here.
Yeah, absolutely. My partner Ted and Nate, those guys actually participated and ran LARPs for quite some time until Ted had kids, because kids will wreck your life, as I'm fond of saying here, and ruin all the fun. But yeah, so they did it up until they had kids.
Well, with kids too, I'm sure there's a whole lot of LARPing involved every single day. So,
Yeah, yeah, everything's a survival check. Did I kill it today or not? Uh, no crit fails. Good. It still lives.
like,
I don't know. I feel good. I've successfully raised one to 13 and 17 so far.
yeah, I
I'm
think you're
out of the
out of the
woods.
woods. Yeah. Like it's close, not quite, but you're like that's pretty good.
Huh. So Anthony has a question. I don't know. We'll see what your input is on it, but wants to know, as a DM, what simple things art wise can a DM do to spice up their game?
Um, hmm. Well, like anything where you can involve, like, I think visual elements helps people kind of get more involved. And like, I know is like, just for me, sometimes I can have trouble when I'm just listening to something um, stuff that can help a whole lot. Like if you're not super artistic yourself, like putting together mood boards of the different locations that you're going to, or like to describe the different npcs that you have, like especially if you have artists in your group, they'll love that. Getting like, I mean, you could always commission me for a party drawing or anything like that. I love that stuff. um yeah, just like, but it's like super easy to just like, go on Pinterest or whatever and like make a board that's just like, okay, here are a bunch of pictures and like this place that we're going to is somewhere in the middle of all of them. Like, oh, and this isn't art, but like it helps with that sort of like immersive feel, like having like boss battle music when you're doing a fight and like, other kinds of like atmospheric stuff is just really fun and helps people get into it, definitely.
Yeah, we used to always play the Anvil of Crom just before fights, for probably like a decade, and then eventually started like integrating some of the soundtrack from Gladiator, and moving
Oh
away from
yeah.
just the Conan soundtracks.
Nice. Yeah, like stuff like Miyazaki's music can be awesome for that. Like stuff from, Nausicaa, if you've got a more like kind of 80s-ish borderline sci-fi fantasy type thing, or like the Witcher soundtrack is great for classical high fantasy.
So you said something about a mood board. What exactly is that?
So it's like people do this like for, when they're trying to like figure out what they want their room to look like or how they want to dress or whatever. You just basically just put together a bunch of different pictures of different but related things and be like, okay, I want something that's like kind of like this but also with that, but also with this. So like for like, if you have this cave location, you could do some like, pictures of different crystals and like, okay, that's what's hanging from the walls. And like, here's what the pool in the corner here looks like, like associating these sort of different pictures with different parts of the map and stuff like that.
Cool. So there you go. So when you start DMing, it looks like you already have some of your own ideas ready to be used.
Yeah, I always have too many ideas, which is better than not enough, I guess, but it can be overwhelming.
Absolutely, and yeah, there is actually quite a few now. There's quite a few audio services out there that you can use for D&D and or in other RPGs as well. Have you ventured into? Speaking of other RPGs, have you ventured into any others yet, or just D&D?
Just D&D so far. And I mean, I've like I'd love to. Like I know like I've heard really good things about Pathfinder. I no wait, actually I did play I played one Fate Core inspired game called Lancer. We only had one session though. But that was like sci-fi mechs, stuff like that, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice. That yeah. I mean, generally, if I'm going to play fantasy, I'll probably play D&D. But if I go to other systems, I like to play other genres. So, are there other genres that interest you other than fantasy?
I mean, I definitely like I'd love to play some sci-fi. I can be picky about sci-fi though, like
Yeah.
stuff that's too I'm definitely more of a sci-fi light person or somebody who's into something that's basically like a mix between sci-fi and fantasy, like, like Star Wars-esque stuff.
Yeah, science
Where
fantasy versus hard science fiction, like Star Trek, where it's all like very like crunch and mathematical and physics. Where Star Wars, it's like it just kind of works.
yeah, the Force.
Yeah,
Laser swords, we got those.
absolutely. Now I agree with you. I like the more whimsical stuff. So what about for actual drawing for illustrating?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do a sci-fi uh like maybe not like a full graphic novel, but like a short story or mini comic at some point would be a lot of fun. Um I think like like fantasy is always going to be my main draw, but I like doing different things within that. Like, you know, I have some high fantasy stuff. I have like modern fantasy mixed with like, you know, Irish myth stuff. Like I love seeing fantasy intersect with different dramas, like fantasy horror, like slice of life fantasy is so much fun, and I wish there was a lot more of that. um I feel like there's like so much that can be done in that I would like to see done, and I kind of want to do it. So fantasy is one of those things that'll just have like a really constant and enduring interest for me. And like horror too, I'd love to do more of, like primarily horror stuff, but more like supernatural horror than like slasher stuff or anything like that.
I totally get that. Fair enough. After reading fantasy novels for like 20, 30 years, I was like, I need to read something else, and I started venturing out into more science fiction and especially like steampunk and alternate history type stuff, which a lot of it had like supernatural and fantastical elements to it still. But like I said, you know, probably hundreds of fantasy novels. I'm like, I just can't read another one right now. I need something else.
Yeah, and I mean like, yeah, I mean in reading I've been trying to branch out a little bit more. Like I read this uh but like even like the like memoir and type stuff I read somehow comes back to fantasy. I picked up this book called H is for Hawk, which is amazing, by the way, about this, like it's a memoir by this woman who like buys and trains a goshawk after her father's death, and like sort of like going over that year and that process. And then like it also talks a whole lot about Th White and like the once and future king and Arthurian stuff, which I hadn't been expecting at all, but obviously drew me into it just from where I'm coming from as a human being, as a fantasy fan. Yeah, it just follows me.
A magnet. Well, also too, I find like when you branch out and look at other genres and different things, even if your thing is fantasy, find you'll be pulling elements from that other thing back to what you're passionate about, and it'll inspire you into different directions.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Cardboard Fortress has a question: are there any classic role-playing novels, cinematic characters, or settings you like to draw or would like to draw or like to draw? I think basically we.
Oh, I think it's like that I have drawn or that I would like to draw in the future. Yeah. Hmm. I love like I'd love to do like an entire like Arthurian, you know, epic novel. My friend Emily did a comic about Gawain and the Green Knight, which is just incredible and like, you know, beautiful, and she's awesome. But like I'd love to like just go through that whole like insane kind of story from beginning to end, and like design all of the different characters and do something new with it. And I'd love to do you know, like I'd love to like design my own like module or like game too at some point in the far-ish future, just looking at my schedule for the next year or so.
Well, it's never been easier to do that, whether you use something like Drive-Thru RPG, your own site, or the DM's Guild.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's a whole lot of stuff out there, which is awesome.
And also you have an advantage being an artist. So like one of the hardest parts about creating content is getting good art. And it's really hard to afford art when you're selling something for pay what you want, or $1.99 or $2.99. It's really hard to justify paying what art really costs, but because it's like you're never going to make that back.
Yeah, and like also like something that I found is it's really hard to get people to look at something that you're making if it's all writing. Like it's really hard to get people's attention without art.
Yes.
And like it's like also like I mean a lot of people are just like they're visual learners and they're like visually oriented people. So like trying to get somebody to imagine something without having a picture of it can be really rough.
So, is there some place where people can find your rates?
I don't have any particular like public rates just because stuff varies so much by commission, like especially D&D stuff, like the amount of complexity can vary so much, you know, sometimes it's like really basic like fantasy armor and sometimes it's like, you know, mech stuff or like Final Fantasy-esque like wildness. So it does depend a whole lot on the commission and like on, you know, if you want just like a lineup or if you just want like headshots or, you know, 4 people sitting in a space interacting with a background and stuff like that. But if you shoot me an email, I can absolutely get back to you with what my rate for a particular project would be.
Yeah, so in the description, you guys can find links to Kate's website, and there you can definitely find the information you need in order to contact her and get quotes. So, Cardboard Fortress wants to know Arthurian style, gritty, really reality, or shiny chrome armor.
I'd love to do not like I'd like to like, you know, I'm not as super interested in like gritty Arthurian stuff like I watched like 15 minutes of that like Russell Crowe Robin Hood movie and I was like this is boring and everything is gray. I'm very much a colors person too, so like gritty usually is at odds with the things that I like just visually. But I'd love to do something that's kind of like that really leans into the more insane fantastical elements of Arthurian myth. Like, you know, there are characters who can like grow to 20 feet tall, or like all of the Knights of the Round Table have these just like insane qualities. Like it's awesome. And like the story of the Holy Grail itself is just wild and like full of all of these different things. And like, you know, when it comes to like movie adaptations, that stuff can obviously be difficult, like through both the limits of like you know, like back when they were making a ton of Arthurian inspired movies, like they just didn't have the money or they thought it would be too kind of unrealistic for people to get a hold of. Yo, neon 80s synthwave King Arthur, Cardboard Fortress is a genius. Yes, that is the exact thing that I want to do. Like Lady Hawk. I would love to do a Lady Hawk graphic novel. That's the exact thing that I would want to do with my entire life. Is just make a Lady Hawk graphic novel.
I was already laughing about that comment when you noticed it. I was about to ask you about that, but yeah.
Yeah, that is the exact wavelength that I'm on. Just insanity. Like I'd love to do you know, these days webcomics have stuff where they can integrate like animation or music or whatever. Like I'd love to have like kind of a chip tune, like somewhere between synthwave and like 90s chiptune video game soundtrack that plays on certain pages during certain sequences.
Now, Anthony is the one in the chat for Cardboard Fortress, and they did a game called Laser Riders. And
Whoa.
It's all very like 80s. You know, the boxes look like Betamax boxes, but it is essentially Tron Light Cycles, which you may or may not know what that is.
I love it.
But on a tabletop version. So I always love talking about their Laser Riders game. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, if you like that, if you like the bright colors and that kind of stuff, that's all in there, and that's the stuff that Anthony's all about.
Nice.
There was a Kickstarter that started but didn't finish. Like they ended it soon. I think it was Liches on Lasers. And it was like all kinds of stuff like that. And we had them on. We're talking about it. And they wanted to do a bunch of crazy stuff with that Kickstarter, you know, including like soundtracks and things like that. But that's definitely like that style where I think you're talking about, like, or what he's talking about anyways, like that synthwave, really bright colors and very
awesome.
80ish. So Brian Smith wants to know excitement level of the new Dark Crystal excited or not, or very excited?
I'm a bad like nerd. I still haven't seen the Dark Crystal. That's this huge gap in my 80s fantasy education, and that's one of those things I've been meaning to fix forever, but I just haven't yet.
Did you at
But
least see Labyrinth?
oh yeah.
All right, you're
Yeah,
halfway
I
there.
love Labyrinth. That's also that's just me. Labyrinth is like me plus Lady Hawk plus Thor Ragnarok, and that's just that's just entirely me as a human being.
Perfect, nice. I am very excited because I remember seeing that movie in the movie theater as a kid, and it was great. Which was many, many moons ago. So, is there any particular property you'd like to work on?
Like current
Well,
properties.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Lady Hawk as one, I guess, for sure. But if there was any, like, if you could just pick.
Yeah, I'd love to. Hmm. And this is like with the caveat that I would love to be doing the writing and the art because just, you know, who I am as a creator, I'm not super into just like drawing something that other people make up. Like I'm really like the kind of collaboration that I have with Emily is that sort of perfect sweet spot of like having a hand in it and then also having help in making it. Um, but yeah, I'd love to do something with like some kind of like Thor and Loki comic. Like they're two of my favorite characters and I love the different ways in which they intersect. And I love like what Taika Waititi did with them as characters in Ragnarok. I'd love to do ah I'm trying like, I have like all of these things in my head and then the second that I'm asked about them, of course they just totally go out the window. I don't know if you've ever read Sabriel. It's this young adult novel by Garth Nix about this girl who's like, she's essentially an anti-necromancer. Like it's her job to put down the undead. And she does this magic with these, it's like a set of bells and like each bell does a different thing. But it's one of my absolute favorite books ever. And she's one of my favorite characters. And I'd love to do something with that. I'd also, if I had a million years and I could work on like if I was like set up for life and I never had to do anything else in the world, I'd love to do a Song of Ice and Fire graphic novels because I'm not a huge fan of the art and the ones that they have. I gotta say.
You want to fix it?
Yeah, I want to fix it, and I just like I just like I want to draw all of that.
And your anti necromancer sounds like my kind of girl. I always fight with the fans about necromancy, and you can't be a necromancer and raise dead and be good.
I think, well, okay. In Fallow Time, I do have a necromancer who's actually the sweetest and the best of all of them. Her name's Morwyn, but she's a lawyer. She like raises the dead to deal with like property and will disputes and stuff like that. So like I think there's like definitely different ways that you can go with it, but there's always that kind of edge of like you're like using the bodies of the dead or like the souls of the dead to do your own bidding, and there's always kind of like a thing about that, and that doesn't quite go away.
Well, that's the way I look at it. Also, in the context of Dungeons and Dragons, if you look in the Monster Manual, those creatures you create are evil. Therefore, if you bring more, if there is more evil in the world because of something you did, whether you intend the consequences or not, at the same time, I feel like you're still responsible for what you did. So, there's more evil in the world. You've made the world more evil.
I guess it depends too on like what you do with them when you're done, because like in the comics she just like she just sends them back or whatever because like the battle's over and now it's time to chill. But like if you just have a bunch of like like I'm sure there are necromancers who are like chaotic neutral or chaotic evil who'd just be like, okay, whatever, yeah, you guys can just go and do whatever you feel like. And then they just go and ruin everything for everyone everywhere.
But also, Anthony, I will change my stance if they get rid of the alignment system. But as it stands, it is clearly defined what is good and what is evil.
Yeah, that's true. Like, there's also like in like a lot of the manuals, there's this whole idea about like entire races being good or evil that like I'm really glad that people generally just kind of totally ignore. like people make tieflings who are all over the spectrum, and like it's just like we don't listen to that, which I can appreciate.
Well, yeah, I mean that's very true. A race in itself probably can't be inherently evil, with the exception of like demons and angels, because they're embodiments of that thing. But societies can be.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can have outliers in any society, whether it's good or evil. Alignment is one of those things that they just want to get rid of, but probably can't yet. Another edition or two, it'll be gone for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like in some senses it's useful, but it's also like, like in the sense of like, where it really matters, like with paladins or whoever who have to, keep to their code, you could just very clearly outline what that code is and like what would break it. And then it would serve basically the same function as saying like, oh, they're a lawful good paladin who worships this person. And like, it would also be kind of more clear to what a player can get away with, I guess. But yeah, I think it's tough too, because everybody's just now catching up to the alignment system. It's like just gone mainstream.
So I've been playing since like the first edition, and it's like you had stat requirements, and you to be certain things, and if you wanted to be a paladin, you had to be lawful good, and druids could only be true neutral, and with each edition they moved further and further away from that until here we are at 5th edition, where alignment virtually has no effect on anything. Yeah. It's just a carryover from earlier editions, because I feel like the designers are trying to figure out what they can get away with getting rid of without the fans, getting up in arms.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, no matter what they do, people are going to be mad about it. But like taking out some of the more like vestigial and like more confusing aspects of D&D is what's going to open it up to more people, and it's going to make it more accessible for new players, and it's going to like, I mean, I think the alignment system can still be like useful to sort of nail down, the the general sense of a character, but like they're always going to be doing things that are like way outside of that alignment for like good or ill, because that's just how people are.
I always viewed it as like a dimmer switch. It's like grades of lawful and chaotic and good and evil. With the exception of some things being hard lines for me, and that is like usually supernatural beings, where they're like the embodiment of certain things. It's like if you had all goodness or all evilness and put it in one place, this is what it looks like, and it's a demon, or it's an angel, or or undead, or just abominations against nature itself. They defy the natural laws.
Yeah.
So, but they'll eventually get rid of it. When the old grognards like myself die off, they'll be like, now's our time. We'll change it all. But with that, we are up on the hour mark. Parting words?
Play D&D. Have fun. Commission me.
There you go. Perfect. Kate, you can find Kate's links in the description. Go check her out. Thanks for coming on, Kate. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching. So until next time, stay nerdy.